So my name's Nico. I work as technical support for Canna UK. We make plant nutrients and substrates. I'm just here to talk through a little bit more detail about what we do. Yeah, so as a company, Canna, mainly we produce, manufacture and sell plant substrates and nutrients, different types of substrates, terra, cocoa and aqua pebbles, and different types of nutrients to suit those systems and substrates, whether it's a recirculating system or more traditional run-to-waste system. It all sort of was born from the passion of learning about growing and wanting to teach people about growing and how to sort of improve their growing game and stuff like that. So they were actually, as a company, producing leaflets, then into urine and milk, creating the company and the formulating the nutrient solutions just in the shed as a family business. And then they released their first nutrient in '93, I think it was, a hydro range, because everyone was banging into hydro back then. That was followed by terra, and then cocoa and aqua came afterwards. But yeah, basically we provide a whole range of high quality nutrient solutions and additives to really get the most out of your plants in pretty much any growing scenario. There's a lot of infrastructure behind that in terms of research and laboratory analysis and sort of DNA sequences of plants and making sure plant needs are met. Obviously that all feeds into the production of new products. So there's, we have multiple research centres around the world. We're a global company, and that they're all feeding into producing ultimately the best product that we can. In terms of the products that we do, the easiest way is to sort of broadly categorise them into three different things. We do substrates, main actual plant feeding nutrients, and we do additives. These substrates and nutrients are all sort of formulated to work together and to be as compatible for one another as possible. So starting from the beginning, we do terra as a substrate, which is a peat-based substrate. It's a very easy substrate to use, so it helps to avoid complications with pH, because in the peat itself we have to add lime. The form of lime that we add helps to control the pH, and it also releases calcium to the plant. So in the bottles of the nutrient feed that we use, we don't have to add the calcium, so you can have a single vega and a single flores, so you don't have a two-part nutrient to use. You don't have to worry about its pH as much. It's a very easy introductory substrate and method to use for someone that's new to growing and just wanting to sort of get used to the basics, so to speak. There's also cocoa. That's obviously peat-free is a big thing at the minute. So cocoa is an ideal alternative to peat. It's made from the waste stream essentially of the coconut industry. People make t-shirts and textiles and stuff like that out of it, and then as the waste stream we take that and we upcycle it into usable plant substrate. We have to treat and process that very, very precisely to be used for horticulture. We also have to formulate the nutrient for that very precisely as well, because cocoa interacts with nutrients very differently to peat, even though it looks quite similar. So you have to make sure that the nutrients that you're using are formulated exactly for that cocoa that you're using, particularly in relation to the cation exchange and the calcium interaction it has with it. So we have to formulate the cocoa A and B for the cocoa. That's probably our most popular line that we actually sell at the minute. We also do the more traditional sort of hydroponic systems, substrates like the clay pebbles, and we produce the hydro run-to-waste nutrients for that, or the aqua for recirculating systems for those lines. On top of all those substrates and nutrients, there's the additives that we produce, and you can use those additives in combination with any of those systems of growing. The four main additives that we do are Rhizotonic, Cannazim, PK1314 and Canna Boost. Rhizotonic is a very powerful rooting stimulant. It encourages and promotes prolific root growth to obviously provide what your plant needs above the ground. Cannazim helps to break down any dead root material or dead material in your root zone and keeps a clean substrate, so you're less likely to see problems with diseases, and also helps break down that old material for things to be recycled for the new roots growing. PK1314 is a mineral stimulant, so it's just a mineral additive, potassium and phosphorus, a very concentrated 1-to-1 ratio, used for a very specific time in a plant's life, just to help encourage at that point when it needs more potassium and phosphorus for flowering, and seed production, that aspect of nutrition. And then Canna Boost Accelerator is a flowering stimulant to be used all throughout your flowering period, and it basically helps to encourage the setting of flowers, the growth of flowers, the yield and quality of those flowers, and to a degree helps the uptake of potassium and phosphorus as well, so it can help improve the uptake of PK 13-14 at the same time. That's the main 4 additives. Other than that, we do other things, other products to help sort of improve other aspects of growing. So water quality is quite an important thing. If your water quality is too soft, you generally lack in things like calcium and magnesium. So CalMag agent is calcium and magnesium at the right ratios to help improve the softer quality of water, particularly in northern England and certain parts of the UK. It's very soft water and it lacks a lot of calcium and magnesium. So for example, anyone using cocoa or Terra, we expect them to have a base level of minerals in their tap water, typically around 0.4 EC. So if your EC is less than 0.4, then it's a good idea to use CalMag to bring that up to that and then add your base nutrients on top. We also do Canna Cure, which is a foliar nutritional spray, which is to sort of help provide a quick boost of nutrient to a plant through obviously its leaves, its foliage at the time when it might need it. There's the mono range, which is just individual specific types of nutrient, which are all in individual bottles that you can dose if you think you might need them at a certain time. And there's other things like pH ups, pH downs, and products like D-Block just to help with the maintenance of a system, just to help keep your irrigation system nice and lubricated so you don't get any blockages afterwards. Tips and tricks for products. I guess to start with, just basics like pHs, pH ranges for different substrates and nutrient solutions. So with Terra, your pH range should be 5.8 to 6.2. With cocoa, it should be 5.5 to 6.2. For hydro and aqua, anything down to 5.2 to 6.2. So they're the ranges of your pH when you're setting after you've prepared your nutrient solution, the pH in the tank or your bucket of water when you're watering. Try not to go outside of those ranges for the different lines. Obviously it's a range, and you need to know what part of that range to use, and that very much depends on what your plant's doing at the time, so whether it's in its vegetative phase or whether it's in its generative phase. So typically in your vegetative stage, your plant will be uptaking a lot of nitrogen. The consequence of that nitrogen uptake is that it will exchange that nitrogen with an alkaline or something that will alkalinize the root zone. So if anything, in your vegetative phase, you might notice that your pH will be willing to rise, if anything, in which case start using the lower end of that pH range. So, you know, start around the middle, 5.9, 5.8, and then if you see it rising, start using the lower end. In flower, what you'll notice is the opposite of that. So the potassium uptake will increase as a ratio compared to nitrogen. The exchange in the root zone means that an acid gets released into the root zone. So because there's more potassium exchange, there's more acid released into the solution, into the root zone. So you'll see your pH dropping in your root zone, if anything, in flower. So then start using the higher end of that range. So 6.1, 6.2 as you move into the generative phase. So in a nutshell, start around the middle. In vegetative phase, you know, if you see it climbing, use the lower end. In your flowering phase, you'll notice the opposite. So when you see it dropping, start using the higher end of your pH range. If that makes sense. Almost using any one of our products, it's always important to make sure that the quality of water to begin with is good. So water looks nice and pure, and water all looks equal. You can see through it, it's nice and clear, but it's very different throughout the whole country. The quick way to test it is with an EC pen. So as soon as it comes out your tap, just test it with an EC pen, and that will indicate the level of hardness that the water is. We expect people with cocoa and Terra to have a normal level of hardness of water, which means that you'll have an EC between roughly 0.4 and 0.5. So if your EC out the tap comes out 0.4, 0.5, perfect, carry on using Terra and cocoa as normal. If it comes out less than that, then you've got quite soft water, and you can correct that using CalMag agent. And that's just calcium and magnesium, plus some other trace elements, but particularly the calcium and magnesium at the right ratio, 3:1 ratio, to improve that water quality up to the base level that we want you at before you start using our other nutrients, because otherwise when you use these nutrients you'll be lacking something in the water. People in hard water areas have the opposite problem. So in London, you'll typically have quite high EC, like 0.7, 0.8 and higher. In that case, just dilute your water down with RO water if you can, down to an EC of 0.4, and that'll bring your minerals and your bicarbonates down to a more reasonable level, and then carry on using cocoa and terra as normal. But water quality is very important. You know, if everything else is right, the water quality can make all the difference between a successful or not successful crop, so it's worth checking. With the aqua range of nutrients, if you're in a recirculating system, it's always better to have a slightly softer than normal water, just because you don't want to be recirculating too many minerals and you don't want to be recirculating too many bicarbonates. Particularly bicarbonates, if you're recirculating the bicarbonates, they'll be sticking in the substrate each time the water's recirculating, and they'll just be continually pushing your pH up. So when people are using Canna Aqua in a recirculating system, it's ideal to have an EC of your water around about 0.3, so you're not going to run into issues with too much build-up of anything, which can be hard to do in a hard water area, unfortunately. Another common question or common tip that we like to say is about when to switch from our Vega nutrients to our Flores nutrients. So typically when people are growing to induce flowering, they'll drop their light cycle down to 12-12, and a lot of the time they'll go straight to the Flores nutrient at that point. It takes a while for a plant to develop into its generative phase. So you'll see on our growth cycle, on our grow guides, we have a vegetative phase and the generative phase. And you want to start delivering the Flores nutrients at the start of the generative phase, which is usually a couple of weeks after you flip your lights down to 12-12. So don't instantly go down to start using the Flores nutrients. Wait for a couple of weeks to make sure that your plant's demand for that different ratio of Flores nutrients is there, and then start using the Flores nutrients. Also, we've formulated to help sort of balance out the pH levels a bit more for that reason as well. But essentially, don't switch from Vega to Flores as soon as you turn your lights. Wait until your plant actually looks like it's flowering, which is usually a couple of weeks afterwards. Tip for rhizotonic. A lot of people think, 4 ml per litre. They look at the bottle and think maximum dose 4 ml per litre, it's really high, it's going to cost me loads of money using that. But actually you only use 4 ml per litre the very first time you water your substrate. Rhizotonic's like a maintenance dose, essentially what you're adding from that point. You prime the substrate with 4 ml per litre, and you're putting in a lot of the rooting stimulants and a lot of the feed for the bacteria. And that's being consumed in between each watering after that, and you're topping up. So after that initial 4 ml per dose, you go in at 2 ml per litre for the remaining of the vegetative phase. After that, your plant's built the majority of its root system, and it's only maintaining the root hairs that are growing on the tips throughout flowering. So every time you water, your plant grows microscopic root hairs. So from that point, you go down to 0.5 ml per litre, and that's throughout the majority of the generative phase. So actually it becomes quite a cheap product to use, even though on the face of it, it can look quite expensive, but it's just about the maintenance dosing of the product. With Cannazyme, a top tip for Cannazyme is just that it makes the ability to reuse your media a lot more realistic. So if you double the dose of Cannazyme for a couple of weeks before you harvest, it helps to break down those root material in the substrate that's going to be remaining. Once you do harvest, obviously try and pull out the larger bits of root material, but anything left in there, Cannazyme will break down quickly for reusing, so you don't have to just throw away cocoa or put it onto your allotment. You can reuse it and however many times, provided you don't have any issues with diseases or pests. If you've had a really bad pest problem, there might be eggs in the media, so that can be a bad thing. If you've had problems with diseases like Pythium or Fusarium or anything like that, avoid reusing the media. Cannazyme will break down the dead roots, but it won't get rid of problems with diseases and stuff like that. So it's best to start afresh in that scenario. So PK, a top tip for PK 1314 is sometimes it's actually better to not use the maximum dose on the bottle. It is a very concentrated and very powerful flowering stimulant. It's a nutritional mineral feeding element. And it's used for a very short window, very specific time in a plant's life. And for a very healthy plant, if its plant's not in particularly best health, if it's been struggling with calcium uptake or you've seen a few deficiencies on the leaves, sometimes it's better to not use PK at the full ratio, because you could be making a bad problem slightly worse. it increases the EC of your water. Increasing the EC of the water, it increases the osmotic pressure of the water and basically makes it harder for the plant to take up water. So sometimes if the plant's not looked its best up to that point, it might not be worthwhile giving it the maximum dose of PK1314. It's not going to be realised in the plant, so to speak. So sometimes it can be a lot more beneficial to use half strength dose or quarter strength dose, depending on how your plant looks at that time. To potentially you can sort of look at what sort of exact dosage rate to use based on the pH in the substrate, but it involves measuring the pH in the substrate, which for some people is quite tricky. If you can do that, basically if you're struggling with a low pH in the substrate, so say for example you're in a hydro scenario with aqua pebbles and your pH in the substrate is already 5.2 and your lower limit is 5.2, if you add more potassium into the liquids, into your nutrient solution at that time, it will just cause more acid exchange from the roots, which will push your pH even further past that 5.2 downwards, which will cause nutrient issues. So if you're struggling with a low pH at the time where you'd normally apply PK1314, go a little bit easy on it again, because you could make a bad problem worse. Otherwise, if everything's going fine, it's a brilliant product to use at the right dose, and it will definitely make an increase into your flowers' size and weight and harvest. Other than that, there's Boost Accelerator as well. It's a very, very good flowering stimulant. It can also help with the uptake of potassium, so used alongside Canna PK1314, it can sort of help the uptake of that as well, so it can be very compatible with that. It's not a cheap product, so it can seem quite expensive to use. We actually have a recommended dose rate of 2 to 4 ml per litre, so if the investment in the product is sort of questionable to you, then it might be worth using it at the 2 ml per litre dose rate rather than 4 ml per litre dose rate, and you'll still see a very good result from it. So it might not be as big an investment for you that you think it might be in the first place, and you'll still get the extra quality and result out of it that you'd be expecting from the product. Quick tip for Canna Aqua is it's ideal for use with a sort of slightly softer than normal water, so ideally a tap water with an EC of around 0.2 to 0.3. Because Aqua's designed for a recirculating system, you don't want to be recirculating around your roots back and forth a high level of calcium magnesium and a high level of bicarbonates, because they'll cause complications down the line. So ideally with an Aqua or a recirculating system, start with a softer side of normal water, so something around 0.3. With clay pebbles in transit, as they're moving, they're obviously shaken about on the truck, and that can create a lot of clay dust that just falls off the pebbles. That dust can affect your pH and what's in your water. So it's well worth rinsing pebbles always, regardless of brand. Any brand pebbles, it's worth rinsing before you use them and preparing those pebbles for use beforehand. Ideally don't take them straight out of the bag and use them straight away, because there will be a lot of residual dust from transit. It's unavoidable, unfortunately, but it's, like I say, it's just best to get them washed properly before use, and yep, they'll be perfect for growth. I think personally my favourite product that we sell is Rhizotonic, just because it's such an easy product for someone to use and get a good result out of. Like, we do a lot of work with our sponsored growers, like in the giant vegetable world, and they do really well with our products. And then there's all these other competing gardeners that are like, oh, I want to try your products, which one should I use? And it's obviously you want them to use everything, but you can never recommend everything. And if there's only one product that I'd say, well, if you use this, you'll definitely see an improvement in your plant, it's Rhizotonic, and it can be applied with almost any substrate, any system, and it really does what it says on the tin. It speeds up your root growth. It quickly helps establish a young plant to become a very productive performing plant. So just for that fact, basically, it's a very easy recommendation for someone new to the brand or just wants to see a quick improvement in their plants, basically. It's just an easy win. So products other than our own to recommend would be things that will give you a lot more understanding about your environment. So Data loggers regarding your temperature and humidity are ideal. If you can get more understanding about your environment, you're going to get a lot more result out of the investment in your nutrient that you use. You know, there's no point having the best nutrient in the world and the worst environment in the world. It's not going to get a very good result for you. So if you can, data loggers are great for your humidity and temperature. You can get an understanding of how it's changing over the time period, and you can make any tweaks and improvements in your room. Usually doing things like that and improving your environment will be a lot more beneficial than simply adding another bottle of something to your nutrient reservoir. Yeah, so other than data loggers relating to your temperature and humidity environment, data loggers to gain more of an understanding about what's actually happening in your substrate as well. So if you can get a data logger that will tell you the moisture content of your substrate, you'll know exactly when to water. You won't be underwatering or overwatering. You'll be giving the plant exactly what it needs when it needs it. You can measure the EC and pH in your substrate. You know exactly how to respond with how you're feeding and making use of the nutrients in the first place, getting best use out of that. So yeah, essentially any product that will give you more information about your grow environment that you can then use to improve it. So yeah, new products. We're constantly looking into new products, but it's a balancing act between having products that work very well and meeting market requirements. So Canna has a lot of, like I was saying earlier, a lot of research facilities behind it and a lot of rigorous research facilities behind it, and as a result of that and as a result of the company ethos, we won't release anything unless we can 100% prove through all our trials and all the research that it definitely does what we're saying and claiming it does, and it has a highly beneficial effect to the plant. So because of that, you won't see new products come out from Canna here and there all the time, because you can't put the research into that many products extensively enough to make sure that they're all going to be beneficial, quantifiably, provably beneficial to the plant. And because of that, we don't have 20 different bottles of different things all wrapped up in different packages. We have a few key products, a few key product lines that we quantifiably know 100% work. And until new products have proven themselves in that manner through all of our research facilities, we won't release anything to the public that won't be proven to be very effective for them, essentially. So yes, there will be new products, but no, they won't be available until we are 100% certain that it's going to be the best thing that you can get of that product and be, you know, quantifiably provable to actually work. Okay, so yeah, what does the future hold for Canna? So the future for Canna, I guess, ties very much back to where we came from in the first place, like very much driven by research and, you know, the delivering of information. We've got extensive research facilities which have been constantly and always expanded globally. Every country has to respond in its own way to what's happening in the world. So there's obviously lots of markets at the minute that are opening up all over the world, which we want to play a big part in. We'll continue to expand all of our research facilities. So in America, there's large research facilities and production facilities there at the minute. In Spain, obviously Holland, we'll continue with the research facilities there to look into new products to ultimately bring out the best products we can. And yeah, just trying to get involved with for the UK specifically, just trying to get involved in the scene and helping guys improve their growing, basically. So rating my own growing skills would be a bit biased, but I could give an example of my growing skills. So I entered a competition. We're involved in Melbourne, which is a giant vegetable competition. We get giant vegetable growers from all over the world growing world record giant vegetable growers. One of them is Peter Glazebrook. He's got 17 world records in all sorts of giant vegetables. He was growing giant cantaloupe, melons. I fancied to go at it, so he basically ended up giving me his cast-off plants, like the ones that weren't doing so great, that he plant out for his melons. And I ended up growing that and beating him at his own game with his own melon plants. So I was quite pleased with that, quite chuffed with that. So I'd say I'm all right, obviously, but everyone is going to blow their own trumpet, I guess, aren't they?